So what people don't understand about the purple cow is it's not about a gimmick or hype or doing something different. It's about giving the people you serve something that they want to talk about. If they think it's remarkable, if they make a remark, then it's remarkable. If you think it is, who cares?
Seth, thank you so much for joining me on the Let's Talk Business podcast.
What a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I started PTEX Group over 20 years ago, and I think I owe you gratitude because it's when I read The Purple Cow, when I said something fresh. Now I can start my business. Oh, wow, yeah. Because this is not the typical. We need to be a little bit, out of the box, different than anybody else. So I want to start there. I want to ask you the following question is, most people, most marketers are usually try to do exactly like everybody else is doing. And they're trying to just, okay, I'll do everything like you're doing, but I'll just plug in my product, my service, and so on and so forth. Purple Cow was a very fresh concept. Tell us a little bit the backstory behind it.
Well, where to begin? Most people don't understand marketing at all. They think marketing is hustle or hype or control or stealing people's attention. It is none of those things. Some people think marketing is advertising, which it used to be. And for 100 years, advertising marketing was the same thing, because if you bought enough ads, you would make enough money to buy more ads. And the internet undid all of that. Marketing is telling a true story that resonates with your smallest viable audience, that they want to hear, that causes them to take action and to tell their friends. So what people don't understand about the purple cow is it's not about a gimmick or hype or doing something different. It's about giving the people you serve something that they want to talk about. If they think it's remarkable, if they make a remark, then it's remarkable. If you think it is, who cares?
So if you don't mind, I want to go a little bit deeper and let's talk about a business when they're building their strategy on marketing. So I know that there's a common line that you use a lot, which is marketing is not about selling stuff. It's about serving your customer. But we all know that you could have the phenomenal product, and if people don't know about it, they don't know about it. So how do you build your product? And you focus a lot on building a remarkable product. So what is the sequence you would tell a business owner, somebody listening to the show, how they approach marketing?
Yeah. So again, the statement you just made is a trap, because you said if people don't know about it, it doesn't sell. But people aren't going to hear about it because you told them to. You don't have a big enough microphone. You don't have a big enough megaphone. You want to put your product on Amazon? Feel free, but no one's going to see it, no matter how much you hustle. That if we think about the brands that have been built in the last 10 or 15 years, whether it's things like Google or Discourse or Facebook or ChatGPT, or we're thinking about things like Supreme, the t-shirt company, right? How many ads have you seen for Supreme? 0. So how did they hit 100 million or whatever it is in revenue they have? Because they gave the 7 people who started something to tell their 12 friends. Now they have 19, and then. So it's 10 by 10 by 10. It's the way every single network, spiritual community, anything has ever spread. Think about Alcoholics Anonymous. Everyone has heard about Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's anonymous. Nobody knows where their headquarters are. They don't run any ads. How come you've heard about it? Heard about it because people whose lives were changed by it generously bring other people along. The same thing happened with the Instant Pot, right? The Instant Pot, it's a cool little invention, but that's not how it became a juggernaut. And it's not because it was $89. It's because if you came over to my house for dinner after I made something in my Instant Pot, I would tell you about it.
So basically, it's the remarkable part is the product or the service, and the marketing is a byproduct of it, because that person actually will share it with their community, so to speak, and the people that have influence around them.
And included in the product and the service is the story we tell ourselves about it. So when you walk into a podiatrist or a chiropractor's office, it feels different than a heart surgeon's office. that has nothing to do with what the doctor is going to do. It has to do with the story that they've built around what they do. And almost every, if you buy clothing, you're probably not going to the store naked, right? You already have clothes. You're going to the store because you need to tell yourself a new story about how you look. You need to tell yourself a new story about acquisition. And the same thing goes through for almost every single thing we buy.
So so obviously, if you have a great product and you're starting to get the word out there, that's something that's going to become a remarkable experience. There's also something that you teach, which is permission-based marketing, which is, the opposite of interruption marketing. So obviously that's a little bit outside of having referrals or having people talk about the product. That's you going out and ultimately being in people's inbox. Could you explain a little bit more what the permission-based marketing is?
Well, you're only in their inbox because they want you there. And the reason they want you there is they heard about it from somebody else. So someone hears about what you're doing. So in my case, someone forwards my blog to a friend. They get the blog. Now what should they do? Well, if they want to, they can click one button and now they can subscribe to my blog. So I have permission to talk to them tomorrow and to keep talking to them until they say, I've had enough of this. That's different than me, quote, showing up in their inbox. It's them inviting me in. And so, if you think about, I don't know, selling something in the shtetl, you're not doing it by banging on people's doors and coming up to a stranger. What you're creating is an environment where someone who wants to hear from you tomorrow, who would miss you if you were gone, raises their hand and says, I would like to hear from you.
So how does a small business or even a new brand cut through the clutter? Obviously, it's always like if you have a phenomenal product, but I teach business owners, and when I speak to business owners, it's not every business is an idea, not every idea is a business, which means sometimes you could have a very basic product, but the way you actually deliver the service and everything around it is what makes it remarkable, so to speak. I guess business owner looking at their marketing in general, like how would you advise a business owner to actually use their marketing budget, so to speak, in today's day and age?
So my personal belief is that the clutter is your friend, it's not your enemy. And there's only two choices. Either your motto is you can pick anyone and we're anyone, right? So think about walking down some bazaar, some street where there's 18 different places that you can go to have lunch. There's 18 different places you can go to buy a coat. And they're all hassling and haggling with you to come in. That is a 1,000-year-old tradition, but it's not effective anymore because the internet is really good at sorting them by price. And if you're just going to win because you're the cheapest one, I'll find someone cheaper than you. It's a race to the bottom. The other motto is you can't pick anyone because I'm the only one. I'm the only one who can give you this. And it's not, when you said breakthrough product, I could tell you how a locksmith could do this. I could tell you how a pool installation company could do this. Almost anybody who makes any prosaic item. The trap is believing Amazon when they tell you you should fit in all the way and be $1 cheaper. That's good for Amazon, but that's not good for you.
So how should a business approach the marketing in general? Like meaning they know they need to gain market share, so to speak. Obviously, phenomenal product, phenomenal service, and everything around that to become remarkable, but they do want to get out there with permission-based marketing. So you mentioned the pool installation. Let's use that as an example.
Okay. So step one is, what is the change you seek to make? If you can't describe to me the change you're trying to make in the world, then you're just showing up looking for a job without a boss. The second thing is, who are you trying to change? Who specifically? So in the case of the person I'm thinking about, he said, there are a lot of people in the United States who don't have a pool, but I don't care about them. I only care about people within 15 miles of my location who don't have a pool. And I want people who could afford one, but don't have one because they don't trust the people who sell pools. They're afraid of being ripped off. They are living in heat, wishing they could go swimming, but afraid to put in a pool because all the other pool installation people are going to rip them off. That's my market. Those are the only people I'm trying to talk to. I'm not trying to talk to anybody else. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So how can I talk to them? Well, I can give you a couple examples or ideas, but in the case of the person I'm thinking about, he started a blog where he started listing every single way pool companies rip you off with photos and with descriptions. Don't let them sell you this. Don't ask for that. You don't want this. Make sure that, and he just gave away every secret in the whole industry. And he did not make his competitors happy. But you can bet that people were talking about what he was doing. And because they talked about it, more people were reading what he said. And now, if you're the kind of person that says, I knew it, I knew these people were all scammers, and someone's given away all the scams, you probably are willing to subscribe to the blog. And after 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years of this, you're like, okay, I'm ready. And you call the guy up. That is the shortcut to building a business, not figuring out how to run a bunch of flyers or ads somewhere and hoping to get some low-hanging fruit, because all the fruit's been picked.
So I think what I heard, and I just want to make sure that our listeners paid attention to it, is as much as you have to put an emphasis of who your target market is, exactly as much you need to put an emphasis of who your target market is not. And once you have that down path, now you know what pain point do they have, or what problem are you solving for that specific market.
All right. So I often tell the story of going to a restaurant that's now sort of famous. And I'm a vegetarian. I haven't had meat in more than 30 years. And early on, my family and I used to go, and I say, would you please leave the meat off? Because it's a vegetable dish. I prefer it without it. You save the money. Everyone's happy. And the first few times, they're like, fine. And the fifth time, the chef turned to me and said, you know what? There's a vegetarian restaurant 4 doors down. I think it would be better for both of us if you went there instead.
Oh, wow.
And that was the day it became a famous restaurant. That when you can say to somebody, this is not for everyone, and this might not be for you, now you stand for something. If you're not willing to say that, then you're a narcissist.
So with all the clutter and all the noise out there, so you mentioned, starting a blog and doing stuff. We as business owners and marketers in particular, and I want to speak a minute to the creative space out there, because it's a creative environment now. We have the SOS, the shiny object syndrome. I know you specifically, I've been following you for years. You stick to your blog every single day, the way you create books and so on and so forth. How do we manage that to not get, oh, now there's a new social media platform, Threads. Okay, now we have to start posting there. And all of a sudden, we're just running from a little bit of everything and a lot of nothing, so to speak. How do we zoom into that?
Well, my blog had 100 readers the first year. And now it has more than that. How did that happen?
A lot more than that.
How did that happen? It happened because people like you told somebody else. Being first in a medium can work if you are really first and you over invest in it. But generally, that's actually not what works. The first people who are on YouTube don't currently win on YouTube. The first people who are on Twitter aren't winning on Twitter. Going first is way overrated. What we're looking for is not that you picked the right one. There is no right one. It's that you picked one. And so if you open your business in Cleveland, don't say, oh, I should move to Tampa tomorrow. Because the hard part is showing up in Cleveland enough that people start telling other people. This sounds so simple. All of what I've been saying for 20 minutes sounds so simple, except people don't have the patience to do this, and they don't want the responsibility of standing for something. And so in the words of Zig, they become a wandering generality instead of a meaningful specific. And, there's a long history of, walking into stores on 42nd Street, and you say, what do you got? And they say, what do you need? Well, no, then you don't stand for anything.
So you're saying that the medium is less important than the consistency of how you show up.
And the change you seek to make. Who exactly is it for? How will you know if you are earning more trust so that you can make more change for the people you seek to serve? And if you're not making a change, then you're just a clerk and you're always going to struggle.
So I want to move into to understand the connection between marketing and sales. I know, they're very connected, and a lot of times we see phenomenal marketing, but then you drop the ball in how you operate. How connected is marketing with sales?
So my friend Anthony is a brilliant sales trainer. And what I have said to him is, I think that sales is what happens when we add unscalable human emotion to the marketing equation. A human being looking you in the eye and transferring emotion to you, that we as humans have a chance to dance with other people. So Google doesn't have a sales force, Facebook doesn't have a sales force, giant corporations don't have sales forces, and neither does Shake Shack, right? That it's like there's someone who will take your money, but the marketing does all the work. On the other hand, it's entirely possible that conversation that you have with, a skin specialist is why you finally had those precancerous moles removed. Because in that moment, enough emotion was transferred that trust was earned. So we have to figure out what's the balance between the two. In New York City right now, there are a lot of restaurants that don't have a phone anymore because they realized the people who were answering the phone were just clerks anyway. They weren't doing any selling. Why bother answering the phone? Just let a computer do it. On the other hand, there are some restaurants in New York where if you're a regular, you have a number. And when you call, a human who cares about you will take care of you. You're going to pay twice as much to eat at that restaurant. But that's okay because part of what you were paying for is the sales work of someone answering the phone.
So as far as if you're looking where marketing is going and in sales, you've been in this industry for a very long time. So I know on the part of what marketing needs to do didn't change, but a lot has changed. What would you say is where's the most significant change that happens in the last 30 years in the marketing and sales world?
I would say the biggest shift at the fat end of the market, where most of money is spent, is TV shows went from having 70 million viewers when they were successful to 3 million now. That a pop record in the 1990s would sell 10 million copies, and now it will sell 100,000 copies. We're talking about 100-to-1 difference of attention, that the whole world has splintered, that there is no story, person, brand that everyone is talking about. That's over. The long tail is here and it's not going away. So shifting our mindset from everyone to someone, that's number one. And number two, your customers probably know more about the market and your competitors than you do. So you can't trick them. If you want to have fun, go to a car dealership and open your laptop when you're negotiating the price. Because what will become very obvious to the salesperson is that right there at your fingertips, you know the inventory and price of every car all around us. They can't do what they used to do. And so we have to embrace that fact. We can't fight it.
I want to shift the conversation to one of your recent books, which is the Song of Significance. I think it's a very important topic, and I know people know you a lot about the marketing, but I think this is equally important, especially for I would say the next decades, where we see so much change in culture as far as leaders, people working, and so on and so forth. First, tell us a little bit about the essence of the book as far as what made you go that direction and write this book.
Well, I'm hopeful that this will be found to be significantly more important than the marketing work I've done. It's about work that matters for people who care. It's about the end of the industrial age, as we've been talking about for a while, and moving to what are we going to do now? What are we going to do now that we have all this privilege and all this revenue, but the world is melting? People are quitting their jobs. We're trying to figure out what we do all day and why. And we have a chance, if we care enough, to not just be a cog in the system, but to actually choose to matter. And that still comes back to, what does our day feel like? How are we filling our business? Are we saying we are hustling and undercutting and hiding? Or are we getting real with people about what we're here to do and how we're going to do it with each other? Who's it for and what's it for? So it informs our marketing choices, but it begins with, what kind of human do we want to be and who do we want to be surrounded by?
How did the role of a leader change in the last decade?
Well, I would say we actually have seen a shift from managers, and managers are important, but not as important as they used to be, to leaders. So managers follow the rule book, tell you what to do. They use power and authority to get results. So lots of businesses depend on managers. Leadership is voluntary. Leadership is about lighting a path forward and seeing who will follow you. It's about exploring the liminal space between here and there, about doing something that might not work because we can. And it requires the people who you work with to voluntarily come along for the ride, not because you're being strict and saying these are the rules, but because you're saying this is what we seek to achieve, who wants to come. And whenever there is change in the world, leadership always defeats management.
We've seen it now. We're just about creeping out of the COVID-19, and we saw a lot of companies pivot, a lot of leaders shine through the times, and some companies will have significant scars for the rest of their the life of the brands, while others have been able to cultivate a culture of excellence, so to speak, with their team. From your research and what you have seen, where what sets the part, like what would see the significant difference between those two leaders?
Well, I think it comes down to trying to control the present to restore the past versus trying to dance with the present to invent the future. So if you have a giant office building in New York and you're paying $10 million a month in rent and you need everyone to come back to work, you're trying to reinvent the past. Well, maybe you could get away with that, except you have a competitor that is willing to get rid of their building, pay their people more, give them more freedom, have them not do dry cleaning anymore or fight the commute, and connect in the way you and I are connecting faster and more intimately than what's going on in the office. Well, who do you think is going to win that? And it's not just about the real estate. It's mostly about this idea of control. There's a big difference between golf and surfing. Golf is this incremental path to perfection. Can I cut one stroke off what I'm doing? And they never change the course unless it's a big deal, unless they really need to. Surfing, the wave is different every single time. That's a feature. It's not a bug. It's what people look forward to. So if we're going to live in these chaotic times, I hope we can understand we're surfing now. We're not playing golf anymore.
And what we say, like there's a lot of people that say that we lost, obviously it's all about human connection. Obviously, we're also talking now, we're having this human interaction and conversation. But as far as the younger generation of leaders, in order to foster that relationship, in order to be around other leaders and being in a room and communicating and having those conversations, do you think in the long term, this will be replaced with technology and Zoom and everything like that? Or is there a place and a time and place where these interactions have to happen face to face?
So I saw some 20-year-olds out on a date and they were spending the whole time each looking at their phones. And I saw 8 kids walking through the mall and the whole time they were each looking at their phones. And I got some photos back from a conference that I attended virtually last week. Everyone else was there in person. And the people in the room looked like they were in school. They were so unhappy and they were so bored. Fortunately, it wasn't my talk. But we have the ability to connect with people. It doesn't happen because we're in person with them. It happens because we want to. And, if I talk to somebody and say, do you wish you had a chance to have another conversation with your mom or your grandmother or someone who's passed away? Most people would say, yeah, I wish I could do that. And the question is, if you could have that conversation, would you bring your phone? And the answer is probably not.
Wow.
And if you could have that conversation, do you think it could still be magic if you had it on Zoom? And the answer is, of course. So what we're really talking about here is, does a human being care enough to actually connect? And institutions that are going virtual, many of them are going to fail because it's an easy way to not show up. But some of them, I spent over a year as a full-time volunteer building this book, The Carbon Almanac. We never met once. 300 of us, now 1,900 of us in 90 countries.
Wow.
And these are some of my closest friends because we cared enough to dance. And that is where the song of significance lies, in creating the conditions for people to actually care.
Speaking about leadership in companies, obviously we've seen a huge shift of purpose-driven brands. We didn't have it in the early years. It was all about the P&L and the bottom line. Now you see large corporations, and From a marketing perspective, or you like to dig in, so to speak, how do you sift through to know which ones are just putting up on the website because that's the style, versus companies that are really care about their mission and their purpose versus the bottom line? Of course, you need the bottom line, but ultimately there is a mission there that drives everybody to perfection.
My default is assume that somebody is being disingenuous. Assume that it's a facade. Milton Friedman said something wrong, something incorrect, and something dangerous when he said that the only purpose of a corporation is to maximize shareholder value. That's not written down anywhere. He just made that up. If companies are made up of people, people have a lot of purposes, and they need to make enough money to be there tomorrow. But that is not why they are there. And when you are looking for an organization that serves purpose, what I would ask you is, how much did it cost them? Because if they are serving purpose and making more money while doing it, then great. I'm happy that they have a tool, but they're serving the goal of making more money. And when you see corporations, big ones, make decisions that they know are going to harm the culture that they live in, I don't understand it. I don't understand why Facebook takes political ads. I don't understand why Google puts companies out of business that they don't have to do that to. They could make everything additive and they would make plenty of money. And so, yeah, we're starting to talk more about purpose. But I got to say, when the climate gets just a little bit worse, we're going to really see hard conversations take place. Just because you can make money building a coal plant doesn't mean you should.
Mm-hmm. I think this is something we could all test because, like you said, either putting the money where the mouth is, so to speak, or is it just a marketing cover up? I need to use the last few minutes to speak about AI. I'm not going to leave the conversation without speaking about AI. Now, I heard a line that you used, and I've actually repeated it in one of the recent episodes with one of our other guests, which you feel that AI is doing similar to what electricity did, which it's not basically replacing people. It's actually just maximizing. So either you work with the AI or AI will replace you, so to speak. There is a lot of conversation to see what is it is, let's call it the good, the bad, and the ugly of ChatGPT or anything in AI related. How do you see it overall, and how can we some practical advice for business owners how to adapt?
So I use it every day, half an hour a day. If you're not doing that, I don't think you can have an active role in the conversation. To watch it teach me how to do some sophisticated computer programming in conversation, just stunning. It's an extraordinary magic trick. It is a magic trick. It doesn't have a noise in its head like we do, but it pretends it does so well that it's almost impossible to use it without falling for the trick. But it's also a productive trick. And so what I was talking about with electricity is this. When Thomas Edison was fighting with George Westinghouse about AC versus DC, he invented the electric chair and also started electrocuting elephants to persuade people just how dangerous AC power was. And I could go on and on about how dangerous electricity was, but the point is electricity changed every single thing in the world. It changed night into day. It changed productivity. It changed what we made. It changed everything. And since the invention of electricity, we have invented more than 10 billion jobs for people on Earth. So it created all these things for people to do. AI is going to have just as many speed bumps. There's going to be some really bad things that are done by really bad people using AI at some sort of scale. And the new Mission Impossible movie gives you a little bit of a hint of that, but it's entirely possible it's happening right this minute. And maybe the world will end. Nothing I can do about that. But what I can tell you is until that happens, you have this patient, thoughtful magic trick that you can use over and over and over again to discover things. And panic isn't going to do us any good, but leadership could change the game.
What will be some practical advice for business owners that are listening to this episode to say, okay, I hear so much about AI. I'm not sure exactly how to start using it. what would be some practical ways to start incorporating AI in daily productivity or daily growth of businesses?
Okay, so the first thing I would encourage you to do is not defend the business you have now. That a well-known academic went to see a Zen master and said to the Zen master, "I'm here for a few minutes. Please teach me everything I need to know about Zen." And the Zen master was pouring him a cup of tea, and he just kept pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring, and it's overflowing onto the table. And the guy says, "Stop, what are you doing? The cup's already full." He says, "Yes, exactly. I can't teach you about Zen because you've shown up with a cup that's already full."
Oh, wow.
So if you're saying to me, how do I preserve my existing business? Your cup's already full. I can't tell you. But if you're willing to start over, when Random House and Simon and Schuster and Penguin saw the internet, they could have started Google because they, after all, are in the business of organizing information. Instead, they said, how do we use search engines to sell more books? That was a big mistake. Here's this tool that is always on, is almost free, and knows everything. How will we use this new tool in a world where real estate isn't as important, trans-shipping stuff isn't as important, Amazon isn't as important? Where can you create value? And if you chase that just for 2 weeks thinking about it, maybe you'll figure out how to bring it into the business you already have. But it's a mistake to say, I do X. How do I take a new tech and add it to what I do? Instead, it's here's a new tech. Here are some customers. What do they need?
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I heard you say, which is that start with project-based, like starting to incorporate AI with projects or with certain teams within your company. Could you explain a little bit what you meant with that?
Right. So you may recall the birth of email, which was only 25 years ago from a business point of view. And a lot of companies said, we're going to just wait till it's figured out and then we'll just bring it into everything we do. But the successful company said, here's a little tiny division of 7 people. Let's see what happens when they use email inside the business. And the same model is here, right? Go find 2 or 3 or 4 people, put them in a team and give them something practical, not to study, but to do using AI, and then copy from them and copy from them and copy from them. That's how your company ended up doing everything else it already does. That's the method.
I mentioned before your blog, and I think you know a lot about that blog. I want to ask you just a practical piece of advice. How do you stay so consistent, not missing a date, not missing a beat, and putting out the content? And again, it's before ChatGPT. So we're not using just ChatGPT to post every single day. Give us a tip as far as managing your time in a productive way, making sure that you show up.
Okay, so first, all my words are my words. I have never used ChatGPT to write anything
Of course
I've
not.
shown the public. But I need to say that. The second thing is, I made one decision 20 years ago that I was going to post every day, which means that there's going to be a post tomorrow. Not because I feel like it tomorrow, not because I'm ready tomorrow, but because I decided 20 years ago that there would be a post tomorrow. There's a lot of benefit to that. You decided a long time ago that you were going to show up at work tomorrow. So you're going to show up at work tomorrow. That cycle is easy to avoid if you're at a buffet that never ends, right? And then just in terms of a tip, I don't think I'm as consistent as I am interesting, but what I try to do when I reread every post is say, does this sound like me or does this sound like someone else wrote it? And then I rewrite it until it sounds like me.
Wow, that's very powerful. And actually, for the links, resources mentioned in this episode, check out the show notes at www.ptexgroup.com/podcast, where we'll link to Seth's blog. And I know that myself, I've been following that. And also, you could see all of, I think it's 18 books. How many books are we up to?
21 bestsellers.
21. Okay. 21. And actually, a couple of them are in my top 10 list. When people ask me my books, I have a PDF. They're right there. So thank you for everything you've done for the world to make the world a better place. Let's close with the 4 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Hope so.
Number 1, a book that changed your life.
I think I'll pick The Art of Possibility by Ben Zander and Roz Zander.
Number 2, a piece of advice you got that you'll never forget.
Don't look for good advice.
That's good. Number 3, anything you wish you could go back and do differently.
I love time travel books. I've been reading time travel books for a very long time. I would say the best one for a beginner is called Replay. I've made more mistakes and had more failures than anybody listening to this podcast. And every one of them contributed to me being able to be who I am today. So if I went back and undid one, who knows what would happen? So no, I understand that there's a consequence to my short-sighted actions. There's a consequence to the opportunities I've missed. And I try to learn from those consequences, but regret doesn't get me very far.
Wow. And last and final question, what's still on your bucket list to achieve?
Well, you can say it slowly. It's a rapid fire answer. The question can be slow.
What's still on your bucket list to achieve?
Well, here I have been on your podcast, so we're gonna have to cross that one off the list. My bucket list.
Anything on the horizon as far as projects? I know you've been involved in other projects and education.
There's always projects, always projects. Bucket list items are very interesting because, like, I've been on the TED stage a lot of times, more than most people. I've had really extraordinary events occur in my life. And I got to say, sometimes you take a bite of a perfect nectarine or you get a hug from a friend, and it's worth more than one of those. So I'm not sure I have a bucket list. I think what I have is a really lucky collection of moments.
Wow, this is so powerful. Seth, thank you so much for joining us. I know your time is valuable. That is why, in the name of our listeners, we'll forever be grateful for sharing some of your time with us today. It's been a blast.
Thank you. Really well done. I appreciate
My
it.
pleasure.